is as low as 3.99%. Live your life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes in a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. Whatever you're looking for, now is the time to take your pick from the off-road's best-selling lineup. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $1,500 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Spring Sales Event at Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and on Highway 83 in Sealy. The best deals on the coolest machines and all the accessories are at Kurtz Polaris and KurtzPolaris.com. Recreate the right way with Kurtz Polaris. Offer valid in U.S. through 4/30/19 on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and ride.
The Army National Guard is offering up to a $20,000 enlistment bonus and other tuition benefits to qualified candidates, including new recruits and those with prior military service. Already received your education or are currently in school? You may be eligible for up to $50,000 in student loan repayment. Get the education you need to land the career you've always wanted. Learn more about the many benefits that come with serving part-time in the Army National Guard. Visit NationalGuard.com today. Sponsored by the Montana National Guard. Aired by the Montana Broadcasters Association and this station.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana. KKVU HD3 Stevensville and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television.
I like football!
Now, the 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. The NFL draft is in the books. Round 2 of the NBA playoffs is hot and heavy. And the Montana lacrosse team is going to nationals. It is Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio and across the state on SWX Montana Television. Hi, how are you? Great to be with you. Thanks for spending some time with us on your radios, on your televisions, on your computers, etc. on this fine Monday afternoon. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Recreate the right way with Kurtz Polaris. You can find us on the World Wide Web, 1029ESPN.com. There you can listen to the stream. The stream is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It gets you right into the station, including this show from 4 to 6 Mountain every weekday. The stream brought to us by Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you would like to pick up your phone and call, we welcome that as well. 329-1899, area code 406, border to border across the state. 329-1899, old guests. Join us via the Rangich Brothers RV phone line today on the show. NFL draft, we're going to get into it. Talk a little bit about some Big Sky players. There's only one Big Sky Conference player selected in the draft, which is keeping a streak alive since the year 2000, and yet somewhat surprising to me that that's as good as it gets. I think about 15 guys ended up actually getting signed to NFL teams, but most of them undrafted free agents. We will get into a little bit of University of Montana stuff with the softball, track and field teams, and also the lacrosse team. Big weekend in Missoula with the PNCLL championships happening in Missoula at the University of Montana over the weekend. We're going to talk in the next hour about the NBA. I have quite a lot to say about the NBA and what I've watched over this weekend, and not so much about matchups and things, but just the state of affairs in the association. We'll hear from Patrick Beverly and Lou Williams to put a very fine point on this, I think. So we've got plenty to get through today. We're also going to give away some Tagliari sandwiches. We're going to tell you about some golf. So got plenty to go through today. Great to have you along. That is our show Outlook. It is brought to us by Lithia Ford of Missoula. Coulter, strong weekend, strong week started, and the last week for me for a little while.
Perhaps the last week of this show ever.
No. It will continue. We'll move forward. I will be out next week and the week following to the Philippines. I'm looking forward to this one in a big, big way. A little chance to travel. It's been a long time for me, man. Been trapped here in the United States of America. I shouldn't say trapped. I like the United States of America. It's my home. But I haven't been out in quite a while, so I'm ready to go. And I'm getting you ready with some backups, man. You got a bunch of guys coming through here the next couple of weeks. You're going to have a grand time.
Can't wait.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Coulter, we wanted to talk about the NFL draft because obviously, I mean, we talked about the first round on Friday, but from that point on, second through 7 rounds have all happened since the last time we convened in here. And so there's plenty to get to. I wanted to start off by getting into the Big Sky Conference a little bit. And I had no feel whatsoever for how many guys I thought would get drafted or, how many, NFL prospects there might be in the Big Sky Conference. But I expect that in any given year, a, minimum of 3 guys to be drafted out of the Big Sky Conference and as many as, a handful, 6, 7, 8 guys potentially to be drafted. Now, that you would know if you had a draft class like that out of the Big Sky Conference going to the NFL, but you're talking about 256 guys, 254. It's a significant number, and it wasn't until pick 240 or 244 that a guy got selected out of the Big Sky. And Keelan Doss, Isua Opeta, neither of those guys getting drafted. Now, Keelan Doss enduring the injury that he did to, what was it, his pec or his shoulder?
Yeah, pec at the combine.
Certainly, if you're going to come in and kind of be on the back end of a potential draft class and trying to make a name for yourself, you just can't deal with injury, man. The guys who are at the top, they can kind of overcome that kind of stuff. You have got to just have the good fortune of staying healthy all the way through the process, it seems like, if you want to get drafted. And that did not happen for Keelan Doss. He did get picked up, sounds, with the Oakland Raiders. And so I wonder, too, an open question for you to start here, Coulter. Is it better to be drafted in the 6th or especially the 7th round, or is it better to be undrafted and maybe have a couple of options your way about where it is that you might like to go?
Well, first of all, there's not been any more than 4 players drafted since the 2005 NFL draft out of the Big Sky Conference. I think that there's a little bit of a skewed perception about how many guys overall from the league get drafted because of how many guys from Montana got drafted last decade. If there's no Grizz getting drafted, that's going to impact the number drastically because the Grizz put twice as many players in the league as any other team in the league 10 years ago. But now that pipeline has sort of run dry.
There's been some guys from Portland State, Weber State, Southern Utah, obviously Montana State as well. So, I mean,
last year was only 1 guy drafted. The year before that, just 2, Cooper Kupp, Samson Ebicom. 2016, there was 4, Miles Killebrew, LaShawn Sims, Tyrone Holmes from Montana, Bo Sandlin from Montana State.
There you go.
The year before that, just 1. The year before that, just 2. The year before that, just 1. 2, 2, 4 back in 2011 when Tywan Jones, Julius Thomas, Jimmy Wilson, and Mike Person. But what's the common theme here? More than 2 is because there's Bobcats and Grizzlies getting drafted. If you have no Bobcats, no Grizzlies, then that's going to directly impact the number. I also think that all the trends right now in college football point to the Blue Bloods ruling the world. And that was reflected in the draft, too. There was so many guys who were flying off the board in the 7th round that were from Power 5 schools. And I think that that's because those guys maybe had a little bit more exposure, so teams, they feel more like when you are like the guy who was like basically essentially the backup running back at Auburn, he like split carries, but he had the 2nd most carries on the team.
Yeah.
He was a 7th round draft pick. I think that comes with the fact that there was 25 teams at Auburn's pro day. So you think to yourself when you're an NFL team, you're thinking, okay, am I going to take Keelan Doss, who didn't run at the combine, who had a pro day in front of half a dozen or in front of about a dozen scouts, or am I going to take the guy who was seen by every team in the NFL because there's just a higher chance that guy's going to be coveted? And I guess you maybe don't want to leave it open for chance. Whereas with the Big Sky guys, and to be clear, I was really surprised that Keelan Doss didn't get drafted. Mm-hmm. I was also pretty surprised that Isua Opeta from Weber State didn't get drafted, because Opeta, he's not just some kind of flash in the pan. 40 reps is the real deal. I mean, that's one of the highest numbers ever. Pro Day,
39.
Combine, 39 reps. I mean, that's a top 10 number ever. And so I thought just for that reason, then the fact that he run a 5 flat in the 40 and he ran really well, he was agile. He got invited to the Combine, which indicated that pre-Combine he was one of the top 250 prospects. I was surprised that he wasn't drafted as well, but I just think that there's been this gravitation towards prioritizing picking the guys from the Power Fives and then letting the undrafted free agent process play out for everybody else. But, to make this thing come full circle, I have thought that the league was down the last 2 years, and that's indicative of the fact that there was only one player drafted from each of the last two classes, including one, Caden Ellis, who's not a Big Sky player. Caden Ellis is an FBS player. Caden Ellis was a 4-year starter at the University of Idaho, albeit you could say it was just in the Sun Belt, whatever. Caden Ellis' dad is Luther Ellis. Luther Ellis played in the NFL for 12 years. Caden Ellis has pedigree. Caden Ellis was a high-producing player in an FBS league who then just happened to basically be forced to play his final year in the Big Sky Conference. So
right.
It even came with a little bit of a caveat. That extended the streak. The streak for the Big Sky dates back to 2000. There's been at least one player from the league drafted every year since 2000. And there's only been 2 years since the institution of the league in 1963 where a player wasn't drafted. That extended the streak, but he's not a guy that played his whole career in the league.
Sure. Opeta, by the way, does get picked up by the Philadelphia Eagles. Keelan Doss goes to Oakland, as we mentioned. And then Reed Miller, who transferred from Arkansas to the University of Montana, played 1 year as a safety special teamer for the Grizz last season. He is picked up by the New Orleans Saints. And Reed Miller had a very nice pro day. He's undersized, but ran really well and gets on it for a mini camp, which will be, I think, May 10th through 12th. So not this week, but the following week that he will be in New Orleans for that. So 15 guys, I think, in total, or maybe 16 guys.
It's up to about 18 now. Joe Prothro just signed.
Okay.
Joe Prothro, Cal Poly fullback, just accepted a minicamp invite. Other players of note, I guess, for people around here that are listening to this show, Simba Webster from Eastern Washington, he's going to the Rams. So that's an interesting fit considering they already have Samson Ebicom and Cooper Kupp and Aaron Neary, who was an offensive lineman there 3 years ago. So they got 3 former Eastern guys already, and now Simba Webster going there. Webster's a guy that had great production in college, but then he was one of the high risers in the league because he was able to position himself to go to Washington State's pro day, which was more heavily attended because for obvious reasons, mostly because of Gardner Minshew, but several other prospects there as well. But Simba Webster ran a 4.42 at that pro day in front of basically every NFL team, and so that boosted his stock significantly. Kettner Kupp, Cooper Kupp's little brother, he got a minicamp invite from the San Francisco 49ers. So what that means is there's a rookie minicamp each of the next 2 weekends. Not every team has them both weekends. Half the teams will have one this upcoming weekend. Half the teams will have one in 2 weeks. Like Reed Miller, he's going the 10th through the 12th. What it is a 3-day rookie-only minicamp, and the guys that are the first-round picks, all the way through every guy that was drafted and all the undrafted free agents, plus the rookie minicamp invites all be there. So it's basically like a collection of 50 or 60 rookies, and out of that, you already know that you're going to have all your drafted guys are under contract. Your free agent guys are under contract through the summer. That does not guarantee them a roster spot, but they will be invited back. And then the rest of the rookie minicamp guys, it's basically
1 or 2 or 0.
Say 30 guys that are basically trying out for, like you said, 1, 2, or sometimes 0 spots.
Yeah. Well, such is life trying to make it in the National Football League.
One other player note that people around here will recognize the name is Manuel Butler from NAU.
Sure.
He's a guy whose career on the back end unfortunately got decimated by injuries. I've talked about him a lot on both the Big Sky Breakdown and this show as a guy who had what I thought was draftable NFL potential. he hit a peak his sophomore year. He was a first-team All-American, caught 15 touchdowns, 1,280 yards receiving. And then he suffered a shoulder injury his next year that cut that season short. He was able to get a red shirt, come back, and then last year, season got cut short again. So he's been injury-prone the last 2 years. And then for whatever reason, I don't know if I thought it was bad advice from his camp, but he was invited to the NFL Combine, and he did not run. He ran at his pro day. He ran a 4.48 at 6'4", 220 pounds, which shows you the kind of athlete he is. But I thought that was a mistake on his part, on whoever was advising him, because they want to see you perform, but they also want to see you perform in the most high-pressure situation. You're going to run a better 40 at your pro day than you are at the Combine because of nerves, because of AccuTrack, because of a lot of different things. But the timing at the Combine is just more accurate than any hand timing is ever going to be. That said, they want to see you run because you might run a 4.4 on your pro day and a 4.5 at the Combine, but those are the same thing in the eyes of scouts because you did the other one in a more accurate but also more high-pressure situation. Right. And you did it in front of every general manager and every head coach in the league. They're all at the Combine. And so I thought it was a mistake for Emmanuel Butler not to run. But all things considered, I think that the NFL draft and what transpired this weekend was a very, very interesting analysis to the state of the league. And I don't necessarily think that there's less great players in the league as much as just the league is diluted across the board because there's so many teams in the league. And I think that means that there's more good players at more schools, but I also think that there's a high level of wear and tear for a lot of these guys too. I mean, you're never going to have a guy come out early from the Big Sky Conference, but Joe Prothro and Emmanuel Butler were both way better pro prospects when they were sophomores than when they were seniors, simply because of their, to steal a basketball term, usage rate. Yeah. Joe Prothro was more NFL ready before he got 700 carries the last 2 years playing in Cal Poly's triple option offense. Yeah. That doesn't do anything good for you. Then he got hurt. He tore his knee. That impacts you forever. And so I think there's a lot of different factors here. But I also think that there's a couple things that have, the fact that the Grizz the Grizz's top prospect is only getting a minicamp invite. Used to talk about 5, 6, 7 Grizz are getting undrafted free agents every year. And that's slowly diluted. And it used to be 2, 3, or 4 Bobcats. Now, none. Those two things are very impactful on the number of guys that are getting chances out of this league. And then the third thing is Ed Lamb had a pipeline going at Southern Utah. And now just Marquez Tucker, the left tackle there, who was actually a junior college transfer, so he wasn't even originally recruited at SUU. That was the only Southern Utah guy. So you're talking about 3 of the main producers not doing it. And same thing with Portland State. Portland State, Bruce Barnum has transformed their recruiting model into not being a transfer program, not being a haven for transfers. Well, you're not. A guy like Patrick Onwasser, who's now a starter in the NFL, he's not going to Portland State for any other reason besides he got in big trouble at Arizona. He got straight kicked out of school. He had to disappear from college football for a full year to get his act together. But as soon as you eliminate that, then you're going to eliminate guys that are top-level talents too. So I think there's been a lot of different factors that go into it. And this is not the only way to evaluate the health or talent in the league, but I do think it's very telling that usually it's about 30 to 35 guys from the Big Sky that are getting undrafted free agents. All the lists that we have right now about Skyline Sports, half the guys that are on that list out of 18 are only minicamp invites. Yeah. So you're talking about only 10 guys that are actually being coveted by NFL teams. I think it just speaks to the league at the status of the league right now.
Yeah, I think that in one sense the league is more even than it's been in a long, long time, and it has been better than it's been in a long time, sort of broadly speaking. The depth has been better than what it's been rather than just simply being top-heavy. But the top-heavy teams have not had as much great talent coming through recently as they have. I do think some of that is explicable. You talk about this senior class for Montana State will be the first senior class for Jeff Choate. And so all the guys who kind of came through were guys that stuck around, but there's attrition there. And it is to an exponent, the more so for the University of Montana. They got one guy going to a rookie camp who's undrafted and unsigned, but they only graduated 10 guys or whatever it was. I don't even know what it was, but their class it was so incredibly small because we're talking about now two different coaches. And when you talk about a guy like Keenan Curran, I mean, he came to play football for a guy who was never even here when he got here. And then, went through that change and then went through another change again to get to Bobby Hauck. And so there's a bunch of guys who might have been here, who might have been hugely talented guys. And at some point, it's just a numbers game. You're not going to have a lot of NFL talent when you only got 8, 10, 12 seniors on an entire football roster.
Well, here's the thing, though. It's more than just roster turnover. It's a blueprint. All the guys that went to the league from Bobby Hauck, and this is the point I'm going to make on this show so often, and I think this is one of the parts where the reason Rob Ash and Bob Stitt are not the coaches at the respective programs in the state of Montana, Rob Ash had a recruiting model that then he changed. When they were 3-time defending Big Sky champions at Montana State, they upped their recruiting. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you're all of a sudden going heads up with a bunch of Mountain West schools and you're losing guys over and over and over again to Wyoming and San Jose State and Colorado State, then you're taking guys way lower down on your board rather than taking the guys that are top end of your board. And at the Montana schools particularly, you have to treat them like developmental programs more than anything else. And if you look at almost every single guy, the only dude that played for Bobby Hauck that was then drafted, that was a straight-up like plug-and-play guy, well, there's two. Trumaine Johnson. It's very unlikely we're going to see a talent like Trumaine Johnson come to the Big Sky Conference again. That guy just is never going to slip through the cracks now because the way the recruiting goes. You're just not going to have a 6'3" corner who runs a 4.4 that's going to go to the FCS. He's just, because of the exposure, because of Rivals and Scout.com and all these things, you're going to find that guy. He's not going to slip through the cracks unless you have a tremendously incredible recruiting job. The other guy's Lex Hilliard, and that guy's a once-in-a-lifetime player. The guy to have that guy in Kalispell, Montana is just such good fortune for the University of Montana. Like, the guy grows up a Grizz fan his whole life, and he doesn't get recruited because he doesn't go to camp anywhere out of state. And he's just this absolutely transcendent talent who can start day one at the University of Montana. I mean, he blew his Achilles and came back and then was a first-team All-American the very next year. That's how durable and that's how incredible just his gifts are. And every single other guy, like, to me, it's not a coincidence that Colt Anderson, walk-on to being drafted. Chan Schillinger, partial scholarship to being drafted. Mark Mariani, walk-on to being drafted. On down the line, Brock Coyle, partial scholarship guy. Jordy Tripp, a dude who wasn't even an all-state player at Missoula Big Sky and goes on to become a first-team all-league player 3 years in a row and get drafted in the NFL. It's a developmental program, and I think that's what Montana needs to get back to. Same thing with Montana State. Dane Fletcher, half scholarship guy at Montana State. Mike Person, half scholarship guy. You're not going to recruit the dude who then stays. Trumaine Johnson was an NFL guy from the time he's a sophomore in college on. That's not going to be the reality at the Montana schools. That's okay, though. They just need to get back to being developmental programs rather than plug and play. I think that was the number one way that Bob Stitt erred, is he was trying to go after nothing but 3- and 4-star recruits, and oftentimes those guys were just overrated. They weren't as good as they didn't have the upside of the guys that you're going to get from Montana that might come in as a 0-star guy and become an NFL prospect, rather than a guy who's a 2-star offensive lineman that does not have the upside, the developmental potential of so many guys you're going to get from the rural areas you recruit from if you're Montana State.
It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana, statewide, and also on the YouTube channel. Check it out, YouTube, Tootell Nuanez. We're there. Coulter, got a couple minutes left here. Out of the Big Sky into the NFL draft in general, not getting out of the talk of the Big Sky Conference with the NFL draft. Was there anything else about the draft that you looked at now that it's fate accomplished, it's all done in the books, that you were like, that stuck out to you? And I'll be honest, not much did to me. I don't, beyond day one and day 2 is still very interesting and so forth and so on. I think the guys who go out and grade the drafts and say this, Dave Gettleman's an idiot and rake him across the coals and so forth. Not that it's not true. It's just, I just think it's impossible to say with any sort of, like, there's no game tonight that all of a sudden you go, see, no good, or see, great. But everybody's got a grade today. That's all well and good. But what did you take away from the draft the rest of the weekend?
Well, it's like I said on the show last week. I think there's a little bit of a false narrative that is pushed by national media pundits, both in real time and on the back end when it comes to the NFL draft. And that is that you're getting these steals. You're getting these guys that are such upstart underdogs in the later rounds. To me, if you get drafted, you are one of the most elite college football players. Like you said, there is 254 picks. That's not a lot, considering that there's thousands of guys that enter every single NFL draft. For example, Myles Gaskin is the only player in the history of the Pac-12 to rush for 1,000 yards 4 consecutive years. University of Washington running back.
Yep.
You've watched Myles Gaskin a bunch. Myles Gaskin is unbelievably good.
Yep.
He is so talented. That's what a 7th-round draft pick looks like in the NFL now. Mm-hmm. Myles Gaskin was, I think, the 19th running back picked. He's a great player. He will contribute in the NFL if he stays healthy. I guess what I'm saying is, like, you can get such talented guys late. There was a player from Maryland, I can't remember his name, but he was the number one player in high school, number one player in the country coming out of high school. Went to Auburn, got in trouble, transferred to Maryland. He's an all-conference player at Maryland. The guy has this guy was a plug-and-play guy. This guy was an NFL prospect the day he walked onto Auburn's campus, let alone his production at Maryland. But because of character stuff, because of the way he washed out at Auburn and had to kind of get back on his feet, because Maryland has been a train wreck and he didn't get a lot of postseason honors, the guy fell all the way to the 6th round. But that's still the type of guy you can get in the 6th round. I think that's what makes it so daunting now for small school guys to get any sort of shine, is because there really is so many resources for these big school guys. And I mean, there's less players drafted out of the FCS this year than there at any time this decade. I think it was the lowest number in 14 years. And I don't think that's a coincidence. It's not because the FCS is getting worse. I think it's just because you're seeing the Power Fives have so many more resources, but I think you're also seeing NFL teams using their picks on the guys that have way more entrenched talent, way more guaranteed talent, let's say, and then using their free agent stuff. Because that's the other change that's been so drastic, is the fact that the NFL rosters for the offseason have expanded. Now all of a sudden you got 90 guys, 95 guys that you're bringing to camp, and you're trying to get down to 53, but you got to fill it in. So you might as well, like the Raiders getting Keelan Doss. I know for a fact the Raiders went and watched Keelan Doss every week this year. He probably has a great relationship with the Raiders people. They scouted him heavily. So when the draft ended, I'm sure Keelan Doss's agent fielded 8 to 10 phone calls. He probably had the option to go to about 1/3 of the NFL. And he probably chose the Raiders because that was the organization that he probably felt the most comfortable with. But I think that's the thing that we're seeing across the board now is draft picks are so valuable. Using draft picks on, say, a Myles Gaskin instead of, say, a small school guy who absolutely tore it up but doesn't necessarily have the name recognition, I think that you're seeing just the mitigation of risk in the back end of the draft. And as far as teams that really, I thought, did well, I thought the Oakland Raiders had a great draft for the second year in a row. I thought that drafting Cleveland Farrell where they did at number 4, I thought that was a little bit of a reach. But I think Josh Jacobs at 24 in the first round, that's a really good pick, running back out of Alabama. I thought that
do Jacobs plus Farrell equal Mac?
Good question. I don't know. I thought that's the biggest question, is because the Farrell pick is going to be scrutinized so heavily because they could have had Josh Allen, and I think Josh Allen is the only player in this draft that had at least the potential to be a Khalil Mack type player. There's one other team I thought had a really good draft, and now I just completely spaced out what I was going to tell you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. The train was rolling downhill, and I got in the way.
The Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns had a great draft, I thought. I thought getting Greedy Williams in the second round was the steal of the draft. He's the best corner in the draft, in my opinion, and they got him in the second round. So now they have another corner.
That's because nobody got a corner in the first round.
Well, right, but now, but if you compare Greedy Williams with Denzel Ward, now you have two dudes who are in there that are young that you can just build around.
Yeah,
that gives you such a huge window. I thought they had good picks all the way around, and then when now that it all settles and you talk about adding the guys they did in the offseason and adding the guys they did in the draft.
Yeah, they had a pretty good first-round pick.
They didn't have one, right? Odell Beckham.
Odell.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is when you just you tell yourself, hey, this is who we got in the first round. That's pretty good.
It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Set the draft aside for a little while. Maybe circle back to it. We got to get into some college stuff. Track and field, softball, even lacrosse, all coming down to it here in the start of spring, the end of spring season, spring classes, and spring sports at the college and high school level. So we'll get into it after this. By the way, the start of spring also marks the start of golf season. And the Canyon River Golf Club is Missoula's premier golf experience. You go out there, unbelievable location along the Clark Fork River there in East Missoula. You know where it's at. Spectacular spot, mountains on one side, river wrapping all the way through it. Great course layout, beautiful setting, and also brand new golf carts. This year and for subsequent years, they will be outfitted with the Shark Experience. The Shark Experience, which is interactive GPS. It gives you real-time locations from your cart, so wherever you pull up next to your ball, you know exactly how far it is, not just to the green, but to the pin, to the bunkers, to various other, whether there's water, hazards, et cetera, you know exactly how far it is. Even if you're like me, maybe not playing your own fairway from time to time, you can go over and you see what the angle, how far it is to get to where you need to go, the front of the green, the back of the green, everything. You can even set up shots because it's got interactive touchscreen and surround sound. Coulter, you want to go have a fun time on a golf course? Get some tunes going. You can Bluetooth it in. You can also get out there with a little bit of satellite radio, some satellite music, real-time scores, the sports tickers on the thing. So they have upgraded significantly in the golf cart department, both to help your game and to make the experience more enjoyable. Canyon River, you can check them out online, canyonrivergolfclub.com. You can also reserve online tee times out there at Canyon River. Save a bunch of money doing it that way. They got specials all the time online. Canyon River, Missoula's premier golf experience.
Hi, boys and girls. Ryan Tootell
And Coulter Nuanez.
from Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio, from your very favorite Tootell and Nuanez podcast, and now officially Gracious Mercy on television statewide.
That's right. We've been doing a radio show and a podcast since August of 2017, and now it's time for us to expand our reach into statewide television on SWX.
We're on SWX every weekday from 4 to 6 live on your televisions. It's available on channel 199 on Spectrum Cable or on 23.3 on your antenna television. And you can download the Watch SWX app and get us that way on your phones and devices as well.
And of course, we'll still be right here, 102.9 ESPN Radio from Missoula and the Bitterroot Valley. And as always, you can find the podcast, the live stream, and everything else you need, 1029ESPN.com.
Coulter, do you think that we're spreading ourselves too thin? Are we going to saturate these people and they're just going to start hating us, the inevitable backlash of the great heights to which we have now attained?
No chance. Tootell and Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show.
The Montana Club invites you to stop in for Club Cocktail Hour. Every day from 3 to 6, sip on $5 martinis. Get $1 off all wine and beer, including cool Montana micros. Enjoy $3 off all mouth-watering appetizers, or swing by Friday for Montini Night and perfectly mixed $5 top shelf martinis from 3 to close. It's time to relax at the Montana Club. Real Montana, real food on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Alpine Touch is legendary around the state of Montana for providing delicious seasonings for every grilling occasion. Now, Alpine Touch offers so much more, from a savory new barbecue sauce to spicy pepper blends to tasty barbecue rubs. In addition to the classic, Alpine Touch has a variety of seasoning salts for whatever you need to spice up. Now that the holidays are over, Alpine Touch makes a perfect thank you gift to show your friends and relatives you love them. Alpine Touch, available at retail locations around Montana or online at alpinetouch.com. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
It's time for the spring tire sale at Les Schwab. Save up to $200 depending on tire size and type on a set of 4 tires, including the Open Country AT2 and MT, some of our previous best sellers. Of course, you'll get the warranty we've stood behind for 65 years at no extra charge. And now you can book an appointment online at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Limited warranty conditions apply. For details, visit leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds, rounds.
It happens. You're positive you put your bank card back in your wallet, but the next time you need it, it's missing. Avoid the panic and take control with the My Card app and debit card from Farmer State Bank. Our app lets you control your debit card and securely turn it off right from your phone. Safe, secure, instant. My Card is available only at Farmer State Bank. Ask about it at any of our 9 locations or learn more at farmersebank.com. Farmer State Bank, member FDIC.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. It took until the end of the final round, but the Big Sky Conference streak of having a player drafted continued on Saturday with the 30th pick of the 7th round in the 244th overall selection. The New Orleans Saints picked Idaho linebacker Caden Ellis. The pick means the Big Sky has had at least one player drafted every year since 2000. Ellis played just one season in the conference after spending the first 3 years of his career playing for the Vandals in the FBS.
Ellis is one of now 18 former Big Sky players to sign with NFL teams after the draft ended, including former University of Montana safety Reed Miller. The graduate transfer from Arkansas started 8 games last season for the Grizz. He will participate in a 3-day rookie minicamp May 10th through the 12th, hoping to get a free agent contract.
He's with the Saints, right, I believe. Saints.
New Orleans Saints.
More than 2,000 runners turned out for the 47th annual YMCA Riverbank Run. Jacob Veru won the men's trifecta with a time of 47 minutes and 26 seconds, while Marissa Sowles, she finished in a time of 1:13:58, winning the women's trifecta.
In the championship game of the Pacific Northwest Collegiate Lacrosse League, the College of Idaho took down the hosts from Montana 17-8. But the Grizz, they're still head of the national tournament. Montana received an at-large bid to the MCLA Division II tournament. UM is the number 13 seed. They'll take on Dayton in Salt Lake City Sunday, May 6th.
Now they always say congratulations. Work so hard, forgot how to vacation. They ain't never had the dedication. People hating, say we changing, look, we made it. Yeah, we made it. That was never friendly. No, I'm jumping out of bed. And I know I sound dramatic. But I know I had to have it.
At Gus Tootell on Twitter, at 1029 ESPN on Twitter, at Skyline Sports MT on Twitter. These are the ways in which you can get us in the Twitter sphere. Certainly happy to have you on board. It's Tootell and Nuanez, ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television, and the YouTube TV. What a deal. Love the live stream on YouTube. Go check that out. Coulter, we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the spring sports that are going on because several sports are winding up their regular season, heading into the postseason, or even already have had the postseason. Tennis is already over at the college level. But we wanted to get into a couple of the other sports that are going on, including softball and track and field, as well as a little bit of lacrosse. So let's see what we can get through here in the amount of time that we got. But the Montana softball team was in action against Northern Colorado and got the sweep. How about that? Montana winning 6-4, 4-2, and 4-2 in 3 games over the Northern Colorado Bears over this past weekend. And this week they are against Southern Utah down in Cedar City on the 4th and the 5th this weekend. And so the softball team now up to 7-8 in the Big Sky Conference, 21-29 overall, and they sit in 5th place right now in the Big Sky. And
most importantly, they've won 10 out of the last 13 games, so they are playing better. The 21-29 is a little bit of a backloaded record because, as we talked about with Melanie Michael, head coach who was in here a couple weeks ago, you're playing on the road. There's nowhere. I mean, the practice time is so delayed because you can't get outside because the Montana winter is so hard. So the fact that they have won 10 out of the last 13 and the 3 losses are to the league champion, Weber State. They were swept by Weber State. They were competitive in that series. But other than that, they have not lost, basically, in the last month or so.
It's just almost certain that a Montana sports team, Montana State, University of Montana, whoever it is, in an outdoor spring sport is going to be so much better at the end than they will at the beginning of the season for that very reason. Even if it's a quote-unquote mild winter, you can't get out in February and go play softball almost certainly. Go golf. Go hit the tennis courts. Go run, on the golf course or go run, cross country or, at a 1,600 on an outdoor track or whatever it is. It just isn't really feasible. And even if it is, it's not the same kind of work. You're really almost trying to just avoid, you're just trying to get through it rather than really working on your forehand or whatever it might be. And so I think you'll see this a lot where teams start slow. And obviously in the Big Sky Conference, when you're playing non-conference stuff, you're going to play almost certainly high levels of competition. So that's a part of it when you're talking about record. But also I think even in conference, what Montana and Montana State have to go through compared to, say, Sacramento State, say even Portland State, Northern Arizona. I know they're at elevation. It's still Dagnab, Arizona. These are – they're going to all of a sudden have these runs where they get so much better into things as the seasons change, frankly, and as they're more able to actually improve in the sports that they're participating.
You mentioned the men's tennis team. They were really, really good last year because they had such a strong senior class. They had a young man who finished in the top 50 in the country in the individual rankings, which I believe was the first time that it ever happened. This year they really had to reboot, revamp, rebuild.
6 freshmen.
Jason Brown's first full recruiting class. So for them to extend that streak and make it to the Big Sky tournament was a good foreshadowing for the future. And University of Montana softball team, they're in the similar situation with just 2 seniors that celebrated their senior weekend this last weekend, Maddie Stensby and Colleen Driscoll, 2 pitchers. So they have a chance to really reload. And a girl we have to talk about for a second is, because she's been an absolute revelation, been absolutely a first-team All-League player, and that's Cammie Sellers. She's a transfer from Boston College. She's a sophomore. She's a native of L.A., but spent a couple years at Boston College. But right out the gates, first year in Missoula, 18-game hitting streak. Her hitting streak ends for 1 game. Then she starts a new one this last weekend, hits in all 3 games, including walk-off home runs, two out of the 3 games this weekend. So pretty impressive by her to be able to walk off twice
and she's
in
the
1
player
weekend.
Of the week.
She's the player of the week in the Big Sky Conference.
Impressive. Very impressive. Also, Colty wanted to talk about track and field. We are looking forward to and anticipating having several track and field folks from around on the show in various capacities as we go. But we are coming up on the Big Sky Conference Track and Field Championships, in a week's time, something like that. And Missoula, the University of Montana, is hosting this year. Yeah, and despite the result this last week is really competitive both sides. There's Cat Grizz duel in Bozeman. The Cats men, they won for the 6th straight time, but it was only a 5-point margin of victory, which is a lot less than it has been. You got to give Brian Schwein some credit because there's definitely some advantages and disadvantages for both sides of the divide in the rivalry across the board. And one of the intrinsic advantages for Montana State is the fact that they have one of, if not the premier indoor track facility in the country. Right. So during indoor season, or not in the country, in the conference, but definitely in the region. I mean, in the inland Northwest, it's the best. Yeah. Because there's just not a lot of them. Well, that's what the Brick is built for. Totally. It's a track and field venue that hosts basketball games. And they have a couple real deal boosters, which hardly any school can say that they have real deal track boosters. I mean, they have a booster that donated $1 million to buy that Mondo X track indoors. They have another booster that basically donated $1 million to have to basically name as an endowment to name the head coaching position for the track and field program after longtime head coach Dale Kennedy, and they have just a lot of success to build upon as well. That's the thing about Montana State track and field. They have been sometimes among the top 3 teams in the league, but they have never been in the bottom half of the league. They're always 4th, 5th, 6th, no matter what. And in their good years, they're making a run at a podium finish as a team. But both the men's and women's Cat Grizz, only less than 10-point victories for the Cats in the team competition. But Montana thrived where they should thrive. The throwers continue to thrive. On the men's side, Jensen Lilquist, who's the best javelin thrower in the entire Big Sky Conference, he did not participate. Yet the Montana men were still able to sweep the men's discus, hammer throw, and shot put in terms of first place, and they swept the podium in the shot put. And on the women's side,
Hannah Fauser, she remains untouchable in the hammer throw. She's undefeated in the event this year. She had a winning throw of 205 feet 7 inches on Saturday. That's the best in the Big Sky by a lot, and it surpassed her school record by more than 8 inches. So congratulations to her. She's a Missoula Big Sky native who's definitely one of the favorites for the Big Sky title in that event. Kayla Holmes was second in the discus, and Mariah Harvey third. So they went 1, 2, 3 there. Holly Houston was a winner. She had her season best as well in the hammer, and then she also had a season best in the shot put, winning the event and going her personal best, 44 feet and 3/4 of an inch, and that's top 10 in the Big Sky. And we followed Holly's career the last couple of years, and she's really great at the discus. She's becoming really good at the hammer. The shot has been kind of just the one that she's been working on, but to pop one to get in the top 10 and basically be now actually a real contender in that event, now it gives up Montana maybe an opportunity, because if she can sneak into that 8th spot, that's a lot of times where these team meets, when you talk about the conference championships, are determined. You go get 2 points for finishing 7th. You go get a point for finishing 8th, and that can add up. So I think it's going to be interesting to monitor this down the stretch, because a lot of talented, particularly ladies, for the University of Montana, and like we've talked about all spring, the outdoor championships are here in Missoula for the first time that I can remember. And I think that basically in track and field, you get multiple redshirt years because you have an indoor season and outdoor season, and if you're a distance kid, a cross-country season as well. So you can stagger your redshirts sometimes. And a lot of these veteran female athletes for the Grizz have staggered their eligibility, and they redshirted. Like Erica McLeod, for example, the star multi-events long jumper hurdler, she redshirted last outdoor season to give herself an extra year of training so that she could have this year. Hannah Fauser, she took her redshirt in an interesting spot too, so that she could have this opportunity. And we'll just see if the home field advantage weighs out for that team. But it's definitely going to be an interesting scenario, because the Grizz do have a lot of talent, especially in the throws on both sides. But as we know, sometimes you got to stack up the points in that team competition, because Northern Arizona is just going to avalanche you.
Coming late.
That and the distance, having a good distance score when it comes to the team competition is such a distinct advantage, because it's the only real event where you can have 5 or 6 athletes place.
Right.
And when you're NAU and you can run in a pack in, say, the 3,200 meters, and you just know that the pack is going to include, like, your 5th best runner is going to be the person that sets the pace in the pack and then holds off everybody at the back of the pack. And that person's going to get 5th on your team and 5th in the conference. And so then all of a sudden you're scoring 30 or 40 points in a given race. So a lot of times you have to just stack points if you're the other teams, because NAU's distance score, it's peerless. You're not going to touch it. But I do think it's going to be an interesting stretch run for both Montana and Montana State, because there's a lot of kids, both schools, that could definitely compete for all conference honors. And berths in the NCAA West Regional Track Meet here, with that meet coming up in Missoula in 2 weeks.
It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. No time for lacrosse in this segment, so we will do it in the next segment. What we do have time for, though, in this segment, Coulter, is to make somebody happy. Isn't that what we're here for?
It's all we're here for.
Let's do it. The track and field championships coming up. They're over there at Dornblazer Field. You know what's kitty corner, across the street, just down the way? The Tagliari Deli.
Tagliari Deli, if you need a sandwich real quick, if you're attending those Big Sky Outdoor Track and Field Championships, like you said, just up the block, corner of Beckwith and Higgins, Big Sky Outdoor Championships, Wednesday, May 8th through Saturday, May 11th. So if you just need to go get a quick bite to eat, go check out Tagliari Deli. Right now, we're going to give away a $15 gift card to Tagliari Deli. Get you started, get you a sandwich, maybe a drink. They got all sorts of great Italian-style sandwiches. If you've never been there, they got great bread, great meats, all that sort of stuff. So give us a call right now. First caller, 329-1899. Just give Tommy your information. We'll have a $15 gift card to Tagliari Deli. Remember, Tagliari Deli, just up the way from the Big Sky Outdoor Track and Field Championships. Go check them out.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up, pump it up.
Need to wet your whistle? Then Town Pump is the place to be, because right now Pabst or Rainier 12-packs are only $9.99, and our St. Michelle 750-milliliter wines are on sale for a low $6.99. Town Pump Food Stores, proud to be part of our community.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
When you buy local, your dollars stay local. But did you know when you save local, your dollars stay local too? When you invest your savings dollars at a local community bank like Opportunity Bank of Montana, you're helping Montana families grow and thrive. Start saving with great rates on money market accounts and competitive CD specials at Opportunity Bank of Montana. You get a great rate on your savings and the knowledge those dollars are making a difference in your community. Lock in a great rate today at Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com. Member FDIC.
Hey everybody, Ryan Tootell, and I'm here with Josh of the Advocates Injury Law Firm. Josh, there's a lot of lawyers in this area. What makes you different?
At the Advocates, we primarily focus on injury cases. That gives us the experience and the knowledge to correctly evaluate your case and work with insurance companies and other attorneys so you get exactly what you deserve to make you whole again. We take really good care of our clients, and we're going to fight for every single dollar you deserve.
Call 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense, excitement, and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in Montana. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Montana High School Association and the Montana Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Tootell and Nuanez. Listen to the podcast on the TuneIn Radio app or on iTunes. 1029ESPN.com. Tootell and Nuanez, live on the stream at 1029ESPN.com. The stream is available thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. Now from the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez.
Hello, my friends. Great to be with you. Tootell and Nuanez, 1029 ESPN Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. We are on ESPN Radio, on SWX Montana. Hi, how are you? Great to be with you on the YouTube. Woo-hoo. Everywhere, dude.
It's just amazing that two guys this ugly could be all over the place.
Speak for yourself, bro. I'm shocked it took this long.
It's because of your good-looking producer. It makes all the good calls on your behalf.
Yes, the guy in the dark room with no
see,
cameras.
if I could sit back there and Tommy could be on the camera, this show would be 3 times as popular.
Well, it would be...
also off the air.
Well, yeah, true.
Because I can't turn on this radio machine.
Also, just...
Tommy, how many times have I asked you how to hook up the studio to the phone line?
Oh, probably 10 or 11. But then you stopped
so
asking.
Conservative. I think I was going to say more like 300.
No, I think it's 300 for Ryan. The thing is, I've worked with Ryan since 2012, and he still asks me every time he does it. You asked me for about 2 straight years, and then you stopped asking because you learned how to do it.
Well, it makes me feel very much shame because I'm a very good learner.
Now, everything you said is a lie because I no longer ask. I know how to do it, provided it's not for this show. And second of all, Colter hasn't even worked here for 2 years. So
it's true.
He can't have asked you that long.
I might not make it because I'm going to quit next week when you are in the Philippines.
No, you're going to earn it next week. See, you've been riding the coattails here for 2 years now, and now you got to go out there. You got to make this happen. 2 weeks, Colter. You could do this. You can do
For
this.
those who wonder why I lament this, I love doing this. I think it's the most fun thing in my entire life. It's more fun than anything in my personal life, no doubt.
What about Red Dead Redemption?
I don't play those games, man. They make me dizzy. I can only play sports games.
What about the show? It's more fun than the show?
Yeah, okay, I guess the two most fun things in my life are MLB The Show and sports cards, collecting, trading cards. Then Tootell Nuanez. But it's a very distinct difference in the roles. Ryan is tremendously talented at navigating and driving the ship. I'm the one that comes up with the content and drives in the runs. You got to have the leadoff hitter. You got to have the cleanup hitter. I'm not good at being the leadoff hitter. Clearly,
you're going to be just fine.
Oh, I know I'll be just fine. Mm-hmm. It's just fun to tease you because you're going to go buy a fish farm.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I'm going to eat some fish though. I can promise you. Hopefully, some shrimp. Hopefully, some lobster. Perhaps some prawns, and maybe even a coconut. That's what I'm anticipating. It's going to be a great time. Coulter, we got to talk a little bit about the Montana lacrosse team here for a minute.
Into it.
They the PNCLL lacrosse championships. There's two divisions, Division I, Division II. Were at the University of Montana this weekend at Washington Grizzly Stadium. So there were 4 teams in each semifinal from both divisions. So a total of 4 games, 2 games, 2 semifinals. That's what a semifinal is. There's 2 of them. That's why it's called semi. But with 2 divisions. And so you had Montana playing Western Oregon and the College of Idaho versus Central Washington. And then the other side, it was Boise State against Oregon, and then the University of Washington versus Simon Fraser of Canada. You know, of course, the Canadian national sport, summer sport, is lacrosse. To pair with hockey in the winter. So Simon Fraser has always had a very, very good team. But it turned out to be Washington and Oregon, the Ducks and the Huskies playing in the Division I championship game on Sunday, which Oregon won. And then it was the University of Montana versus the, are you ready now, undefeated College of Idaho. The College of Idaho, you want to know what the closest margin of victory they've had this season?
4.
6.
I think you
6
said that
goals.
13-9. I got a photographic memory. I looked at all your notes.
No chance. No chance. 13-9. In any case,
regardless, they're undefeated.
They're undefeated, and they've won a bunch of games by teens and even 20 goals. I think they beat my mighty Pacific Lutheran University Lutz 28-0. If I've got that correct. In any case, the Grizzlies fell to College of Idaho in the championship game. And so I think it was like 18-9, something like that was the final score. It was 13-9. It was a 4-goal game late, and then a run when Montana was trying to take some chances to get back into that thing and ended up falling. However, so automatic bid, by the way, national championship tournament begins a week from today in Salt Lake City. And the College of Idaho gets an automatic bid. It's just like the big dance. You know, I think there's 8 conferences nationwide. The winner of each of those conference tournaments gets an automatic bid, and then there's 8 at-large bids. And the University of Montana got one of them. They are the 13th seed. They're going to go play Dayton. I think this is the 2nd year in a row, in fact, they're going to play Dayton. But they were not sure if they were going to get into this thing. And it's an interesting rivalry, too, because Montana State, Coulter, is not in the PNCLL. They're in the Rocky Mountain Lacrosse Conference, which is – so they play each other every year, you know, for the
rivalry.
Cat Grizz rivalry, the Copper Cup they play for. But they're not in the same conference in lacrosse. And so Montana State is in with Northern Colorado, Utah State, Wyoming, Denver, Colorado School of Mines, ironically enough, Fort Lewis, MSU, Denver, and Colorado Springs. Montana State won as the best team in the Northwest division of their league, but they took second and they lost in the championship game of that conference tournament.
Right.
They beat Montana head-to-head, 14-9 in the Copper Cup. Both Montana and Montana State played very, very tough schedules. The Grizzlies had a better overall record than did Montana State, but again, lost the head-to-head matchup. Montana State did not get in that large bid, and the Montana Grizzlies did. And obviously, you know, the head-to-head would matter, but you're going to take the overall look. And I don't know exactly what the committee is looking at and identifying to pick, certain teams to go. Montana has a history of very good lacrosse. They won the national championship in 2007, and I think sometimes that goes a long way where the foundation, the backing of a team like that. But congratulations to the Grizzlies for getting into it's there's only 16 teams that go. And you're into the Sweet 16 just by going to the tournament. And I know, especially for the senior class, a big deal to get into that and have an opportunity to extend your career and play in one more big-time tournament down there in Salt Lake.
Utah State 13, Southern Idaho 9. 13-9, 4-goal.
Southern Idaho?
College of Idaho, excuse me.
No, I don't.
I'm looking at the schedule.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
It's okay. Got a better memory. It's fine. Utah State was the team that beat Montana State. That's what led me to that. But I was there for the semifinal game against Western Oregon and University of Montana.
Yep.
Thought it was very, very compelling. I have been to several lacrosse games live because my cousins played lacrosse in Idaho. They're all from Coeur d'Alene. There's high school lacrosse. It's way more established there than it has been in Montana.
Yep.
But I was not really familiar with the sport per se, and I thought it was very easy to pick up, just the rules and the strategies and the way people move. Like I was telling Tucker Sargent, head coach of the University of Montana, there's some very obvious and distinct elements of basketball, the way you move, the improvisation. It's very similar to basketball.
Yep.
The reactionary, the change of possession. When you clear it and then you're on offense and now you have a guy that's playing defense, you have to play both ways, even though there is distinct defenders and midfielders and stuff. Everybody kind of has to play both ways. That was one thing that's very easy parallel to basketball. The way that they move, the give and goes, stuff like that is very similar to basketball. There's obviously the football element just in terms of the contact. Yep. But I thought that there was a baseball element. I told Tucker that, and he said, I never heard that. And the baseball element is being able to predict the way the ball is going to bounce when it's on the turf. And I thought that the guys that are the best in attaining possession are the ones that when the ball comes loose, it's not where the ball's at. It's where the ball's going to be in a split second. And the guys that are able to react, it's just like playing shortstop. When you can react and pick it and scoop it, then all of a sudden you can clear it. But I was impressed with the talent. I thought University of Montana has a lot of good players.
Yeah.
Very good. And I thought the other thing that was fascinating was the importance of the face-off. I guess I didn't realize how important that position was and how dominant someone can be at that position. You guys dropped a stat on one of your broadcasts that the guy from the College of Idaho has won something like 94% of his face-offs this year or something like that.
Yeah, he's like 127 and 11.
So you get possession every time. I mean, that's like a guy averaging 40 rebounds per game. Like you get the possession every time. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's I mean, that is obviously an aberration, but it is interesting. It's like after every score, say in basketball, after every bucket, if you went back and had another jump ball, but you turned out to just have the tallest guy on your team, would be a distinct advantage because you just get the ball every time, or most of the time. And so it is an important deal, and it's not just about the guy in the middle. There's a scrum for it kind of in the center of the field. There's three guys from each team that kind of get to go after it. But yeah, it's a big part of the game. But it's a super fun sport. It's grown significantly in Montana. It exists in the high schools now, and they're playing it even before high school, the youth leagues and things. And that is outstanding. But also a place like College of Idaho. You go, College of Idaho? I don't know. Caldwell? What's that? Well, it's not far from Boise, and it's in the kind of Meridian Nampa Valley there. And the greater Boise area, what they have in terms of their youth lacrosse programs and what it exists, and also in Utah and in Colorado, huge.
Right.
And so they don't have to go far to get guys who are really, really good, whereas Montana, you get about half the guys from the state of Montana from somewhere, and then a whole bunch of guys from goodness knows where, America, USA, coming into play that gives them, the talent that they need, because they're still not to a point where you can just take, local or even statewide kids and field a team that's going to be competitive.
Yeah, no doubt. And that school is growing, and it's investing a lot of money in sports. They have a lot of those Albertsons booster money, like some of that old money in Idaho. They have a lot of that flowing through there, and I think that's having an impact. was interesting. I spent the day down at Zip Beverage working on some sales stuff. We got Windermere Brothers Brewing that's going to do some stuff with us here on this show. Stay tuned on that because we got an exciting giveaway upcoming. One of the guys that I was working with Windermere that we were talking down at Zip, he actually played lacrosse at Western Oregon. And I asked him when I was first getting to know him, I said, hey, you ever been to Montana? He said, yeah, one time. He said, we came here back in 2007, and we got just whipped by the University of Montana, and that was the national championship that you were alluding to. But I thought that was funny. I said, oh, well, crazy. I just watched Western Oregon yesterday play here in Missoula. And he's like, wow, that's crazy. He's like, I haven't been here in 12 years. And they were here yesterday? And I was like, yeah. So that was kind of a funny small
connection.
World. Small world story. But a testament to that Montana team because they were – I mean, that's probably as good as Grizz lacrosse has ever been. But it's exciting for the Grizz to get an at-large because I know that it's – from everything Tucker Sargent has explained to us, so much of the power in the MCLA resides in the Midwest. All those – I mean, the top – 5 of the top 7 teams in the country are all in the same conference,
right?
And so usually it's kind of like out here, that Rocky Mountain Conference and the PNCL, they only get one team in the national tournament is my understanding. So to get a second team behind the College of Idaho and have it to be an at-large team, it's a good testament, good feather in the cap for the University of Montana. I'm happy for those guys that they get to advance and go play in Salt Lake City next weekend.
No doubt. Tootell, hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 coming up. We are going to get into some NBA stuff. We got to talk a little bit about the state of the game. I have some things that I think about this thing that I want to talk about a little bit. Hey, did you see this, Coulter? Utah State only beat College of Idaho, or lost to College of Idaho by 4, 13-9. Like I said. Hey, if you had a place that you wanted to have a convention, maybe a business meeting, maybe you just need a place to put somebody up for the weekend when they're flying in, there's a pretty good spot, Coulter, very conveniently located. Tell them about the Wingate by Wyndham.
Wingate by Wyndham is Missoula hotel that truly offers something for everybody. Wingate has an awesome water park, sweet water slide, but they also have great business acumen, great business opportunities. They offer year-round rates for corporate travelers with bonus travel of extra Wyndham rewards points. They upgrade all regular business guests for no charge whenever possible. But even though they offer a great value and cool perks, the regular guests would tell you it's a service that keeps them come back for more. Give Kim or Alicia a call right now. Find out what they have to help you with your business needs. As always, let the Wingate by Wyndham make you feel at home even when you're not.
Hi, boys and girls. Ryan Tootell
and Coulter Nuanez
from Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio, from your very favorite Tootell and Nuanez podcast, and now officially Gracious Mercy on television statewide.
That's right. We've been doing a radio show and a podcast since August of 2017, and now it's time for us to expand our reach into statewide television on SWX.
We're on SWX every weekday from 4 to 6 live on your televisions. It's available on channel 199 on Spectrum Cable or on 23.3 on your antenna television, and you can download the Watch SWX app and get us that way on your phones and devices as well.
And of course, we'll still be right here, 102.9 ESPN Radio from Missoula and the Bitterroot Valley. And as always, you can find the podcast, the live stream, and everything else you need, 1029ESPN.com.
Coulter, do you think that we're spreading ourselves too thin? Are we going to saturate these people and they're just going to start hating us, the inevitable backlash of the great heights to which we have now attained?
No chance. Tootell Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show.
We ate a lot of steaks before we came up with the Montana Club's Private Reserve Cut Angus. It's as good a steak as you're going to get. Our Private Reserve Cut Angus is specially cut for us. And with our custom seasoning, it has a flavor that's absolutely incomparable. We're confident that it will satisfy the most discriminating steak customer for an unrivaled steak experience. Real Montana, real food. The Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey folks, the best season of the year is upon us. That's right, it's tax return season, and there's one place to have the most fun and make that refund check stretch further than anywhere else: Selway Armory. Selway Armory has the largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories of anywhere around, and they have the expertise to go with it. It's not everywhere that you can shop local and save money, but Selway Armory will meet or beat any box store price, and your money stays in Montana. It's tax return time, so get more bang for your buck at Selway Armory. Visit online at selwayarmory.com.
Here at Florence Coffee Co., we are proud to serve the finest flavors under the big sky, like our smooth and delectable cold brewed toddy coffee. Florence Coffee's fresh brewed toddy coffee is known for its low acidity and smooth flavor. Served over ice, Add your favorite flavor or an iced coffee like no other. Try one today at any of our Floco locations around Western Montana and visit us at FlorenceCoffeeCo.com.
Florence Coffee Company.
Hey, Tootell and Nuanez is on from 4 to 6 every afternoon on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
We also know that not everybody can listen to all 2 hours every single day.
Well, they should, Coulter. I mean, what else do you have to do? Take off work early, drive home slow, and sit in your driveway for 70 minutes to get the entire show.
Here's the thing. We've made it easy for everybody to listen to the show every single day whenever it's convenient for them by podcasting every show.
Well, that's nice of us.
You can listen to the full Tootell and Nuanez every single day on iTunes, the TuneIn Radio app, Spotify, and Podbean. Tootell and Nuanez, the podcast, available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana. KKVU HD3 Stevensville and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here are some sports. It took until the end of the final round, but the Big Sky Conference streak of having players drafted did continue Saturday with the 30th pick of the 7th round and the 244th selection overall. The New Orleans Saints picked Idaho linebacker Caden Ellis. The pick means the Big Sky has had at least one player drafted in every draft since 2000. Ellis played just one season in the league after spending the first 3 years of his college career playing for the Vandals in the FBS, the Sun Belt Conference.
Ellis is the son of Luther Ellis, longtime NFL veteran, stud defensive tackle for the Detroit Lions. He was also one of 18 former Big Sky players to sign with NFL teams after the draft ended, including former University of Montana safety Reed Miller. The graduate transfer from Arkansas started 8 games last season for the Grizz. He will participate in a 3-day mini camp with the New Orleans Saints May 10th through the 12th, hoping to get a free agent contract.
More than 2,000 runners turned out for the 47th annual YMCA Riverbank Run. Jacob Veru, won the men's trifecta in a time of 47 minutes, 26 seconds, while Marissa Sowles won the women's side in a total time of 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 59 seconds.
And finally, in the championship game of the PNCLL, the College of Idaho took down the host University of Montana Grizzlies 17-8, but the Grizz, they're still heading to the National Lacrosse Tournament.
Things I think about the NBA right now, and I have a bad feeling that I'm going to be a wet blanket on what should be a very exciting and fun thing.
I lobby to do one of our big segments in the show every day on the NBA. So when you say you have something you want to talk about in the NBA, it makes me so excited.
Is that right?
I mean, dude, if it was up to me, this show would be about the NBA.
Well, it kind of is. It kind of is. It's Tootell and Nuanez, your NBA insiders on 102.9 ESPN Radio. Great to be with you. Thanks for spending some time with us. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. If you missed anything in the first hour of the show, check it out on the podcast, the Tootell Nuanez podcast. How do you say your name? Is available on the TuneIn Radio app, iTunes, and Spotify. It's also available on the station website or wherever else you get your podcast from. It is there thanks to the Excuse me. Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Make you feel at home even when you're not. Coulter.
Speaking of great sponsors of the show,
yep.
We usually don't give it all up on the to the winners, but congratulations to Brian Cody from the Desperado. He won our Taglieri today.
Good. And why not? Sometimes
I mean, I know he's watching, and they got the show on down there, and he gives away a dozen wings every week, so good for him for winning that.
Came full circle with that. Very good. Okay, here's my here's what I want to do here with this NBA thing. Okay, I'm not here to break down the first games of the second round and talk about how disappointed I am in the Milwaukee Bucks and how happy I am about the first game of the Houston Golden State series just from a competitive standpoint. We can get into that stuff. I want to talk about Lou Williams and Patrick Beverley in their post-game press conference. I'm going to let them answer this question that gets asked. And also, as that was sort of playing in the back of my head, me watching the Houston Golden State game and my thoughts about this. So this is after Game 6 of the Clippers Golden State series, in which Kevin Durant had a phenomenal series. Obviously had 50 points in the game as well. And then the Los Angeles Clippers, won 2 games, which was 2 games more than a lot of people thought they would win, but are now eliminated and now out of the postseason at the hands of Kevin Durant and the Golden State Warriors. So here you go. You'll hear the question and then the answer. The first guy talking is Patrick Beverley, and then Lou Williams, in an attempt to sort of pacify, it gives an even better answer. So here you go.
What more could you have done to slow Kevin down, especially in the first half?
I answer this.
Go ahead.
What you think? You played basketball before? What you think? Honestly, that's an honest question. What you think? You watch a lot of basketball. You with ESPN. I mean, he's Kevin Durant.
I promise we tried.
We didn't roll over. And we didn't just say, hey, man, you know what? Just come on, give us 50 tonight. Of course not. He's a hell of a player. The shots he took, he made some tough shots. If you was a coach, what would you tell us to do? Thank you.
We tried everything. So we tried everything. We had several different coverages for KD, and
they didn't work.
like sometimes you come across special people, and it doesn't matter what you send to them. It's no scheme. It's no it's no nothing that you can do with special people. He's one of them, and he showed it tonight. He put them guys on his shoulders, and even the game that he came out, he was like, "I'm Kevin Durant. Y'all know who I am," and that's a bold statement to make when you're about to go see some guys that's extremely competitive. And he came out that game, and he said, "I can really shoot over these guys," and he did it. So it wasn't lack of effort on our part. He's an all-world professional, and he proved himself. He proved exactly who people think he is, who he think he is himself, and he did it. And you tilt your hat off to a guy like that.
All right.
Okay, first of all, excellently done. Patrick Beverley taking exception to the question, I think reasonably so, particularly when he is the guy with the unenviable task of being the primary defender on Kevin Durant.
What you think, we're not trying?
Yeah.
So great.
And then Lou Williams saying, sometimes a guy's just that good. Sometimes there's a special player. Now, here's the thing to me. People have been talking about how great the NBA is right now and the level of talent in the NBA, and they're 100% right.
Before you go into this tangent, I got to say one thing.
What tangent? It's the segment. You're the one going on a tangent.
Okay, I just got to say, what I heard there was authenticity between two of the coolest guys in the NBA. I love those two guys. I think that they both have the great ability to fill an what's the biggest problem in the NBA right now? The biggest problem in the NBA is how many dudes think they're the best player in the NBA. There's like 30 dudes that think they're the best player in the NBA, including guys that are on the team with guys that are better than them. There's 4 guys on the 76ers that think they're top 10 players. They're not. Jimmy Butler's the 4th best player on the 76ers right now. Jimmy Butler's a great player, but he's not. Those two guys are perfect for any NBA, for the modern NBA, because Patrick Beverley can play with, alongside anybody, and he will be what he is. Same with Lou Williams, because he comes off the bench. But what I heard there was not only authenticity and not only candid quotes, I heard a sales pitch. I heard Lou Williams saying, hey, we
KD.
love you, KD.
Hey,
come on.
How about Los Angeles?
How
yes,
about Los
sir.
Angeles?
You're 100% right. That's exactly.
So carry on now with your rant.
Well, it's not a rant. Here's the deal. Who can't be in awe of Steph Curry when he steps back and just bangs in everybody's eyeball? James Harden the same, Kevin Durant the same, and a bunch of guys the same. And we know it's become a shooter's league, but even a guy like Giannis in and around the rim, Joel Embiid around the rim, the ability of even a Ben Simmons to get to a spot, Chris Paul run the thing. There are the guy, you've said this many times, but in order to play in the NBA, you don't have to be all around good. I mean, you do, but what you need is to be elite at something.
Yes.
And there are a bunch of dudes who are better than anyone has ever been at some specific skill.
Yep.
Okay? That's what we are seeing right now in the NBA. And as impressive as it is to watch James Harden step back, get, knocked down, maybe not given a place to land, and I'm not going to get into that controversy here, but to be able to make the shot alone in a gym 1 out of 10 would be an amazing shot, and he's hitting it half the time in playoff games with guys all over him. It's a stunning skill to be able to do what James Harden does, to be able to do what Steph Curry does, to be able to do and be who Kevin Durant is. I also find it tiring now. And the reason is for exactly the thing. Patrick Beverley's one of the top 5 defenders in the league. His elite skill is agitator, but secondarily, it is defender. And you know what his answer is for Kevin Durant? What'd you want me to do? We did everything we could do. We threw the entire kitchen sink. We didn't have a lack of effort. We didn't have a lack of preparation. We didn't have a lack of scheme. We didn't lose. I gave everything that I had to do this, and he hung up a half a hundy on me. Okay? So don't ask me what I should have done better in the first half. Kevin Durant is a born scoring machine. And now in the NBA, what do you have? You have effectively the spread offense where the quarterback drops back, somebody's going to be open, you find who the open guy is, and you throw it to him. That's an analogy. That's not a literal one-to-one mapping. But right now in the NBA, what is it that you can do? High pick and roll if you got a big who can't defend on the perimeter. If you do, you'd step back and you hit the 3 in his eye, you shake him up. And if that's a problem, you just get the big switched on to the guy that you want him guarding on the perimeter, and then you let Steph Curry go left-right. 1 step back, 1 step forward, take him on a little dance, and then put that in the hole. The only defense that's happening is guys missing. Like, the only thing that's interesting is to see if a shot's going to go in or not. But if it doesn't, it's not because the defense was great. And by the way, this isn't an indictment on the defense. The defense is probably as good as it's been in a long, long time in the NBA.
Ever.
It's just that the guys are so great at doing the things that they do, it's not even interesting to see what the defense is trying to pull off. It's just a matter of switching off till you get the matchup or till you get a guy in a spot that he's uncomfortable, and then you just do what you want with him. And it's not the team offense that we have been watching, that we've been in awe of the Golden State Warriors 3-4 years ago. This is the greatest thing that we've ever seen in terms of the passing and the team concept and all of that. That is very, very quickly going the way of the Buffalo, because all you need are 2 guys who are the greatest at what they do to get in a little 2-man game, and there's nobody that can stop them. Period. They can miss some shots, they can have a bad night out and thus lose a game, but if they are on, they will win. And the great analysis now of the NBA, again, it's a joke, but it's not, how many threes did you make? Who made more threes than the other team? That's it. That's all. And so while I am enjoying very much and still in complete amazement of what James Harden can do, of what Steph Curry can do, as a game, as a sport, as an ability to play defense and actually prevent somebody from doing something, like, if a guy is in a guy's face and he shoots it from 28 feet and he's all over him and the shot doesn't go in, you know what my thought is? It isn't, well, that was great defense. It was, well, he missed it. He missed it. The onus was on the shooter that he missed the shot, and it's no credit to Patrick Beverley or anybody else. And they are not inept, but they are impotent to do anything now in the NBA. And that's not always the case, because it's certainly not across the board that you have guys like the guys that I named that are these first-team all-NBA players. But especially in the postseason, there's a higher group of those. You think you can stop Kyrie Irving from going anywhere that he wants to on the back? No, you cannot. No, you cannot. And so I am sort of at a level where I'm like, okay, but this is just, it's a one-way street here. I'm in love with the offense that I'm watching, but it's so good now that there's just nothing to be done with it. And I wonder, well, is this interesting to me?
There's a lot there. First of all, I think you got to just step back and realize
and hit the 3. Step back and hit the 3.
I think you got to realize that Kevin Durant and James Harden are 2 of the most unorthodox players in the history of the league. And there's a ton of guys that you can replicate. We've seen multiple guys that were trying to replicate Michael Jordan. They didn't have the mental aspect of it or quite the elite athleticism, but Vince Carter was a carbon copy of Michael Jordan physically. He never attained that level, but it's hard to hate on Vince Carter now that he's still starting games in the NBA. He's 41 years old. I mean, he's been in the league since I was like an 8-year-old. Like he's been in the league for more than 2 decades. It's incredible.
It is incredible.
Kobe Bryant is much like Michael Jordan. There's not going to be another player like Kevin Durant.
Well, Kevin Durant. No, there isn't. There isn't.
Okay, so multiple things here. Multiple thoughts here. First of all, I think this is the number one thing that is a drawback for fans in the NBA is there's this whole narrative that people don't play defense in the NBA. That's not true.
It isn't true.
It's a make or miss league, and the best shot makers can just make shots over anybody.
Yes.
Anybody. It doesn't matter. I mean, aside from punching Kevin Durant in the face, you're not going to get him to miss shots if he's on.
I don't think that will work.
I don't think so either.
He's still going to bury it.
If he's dialed and he's mad, like he's been mad the last couple weeks. When he's mad, I mean, it's over. And like he keeps saying it seems like a line, seems like coach speak when the reporter's asking what's going on, and he keeps saying just more opportunities. But that's actually true. Like in that series, they realized, they're guarding you with Patrick Beverley. Okay, game one, that worked. The antagonistic nature of it worked. You got flustered. You got tossed. Okay. But if you just keep going back to the well, Kevin Durant's a foot taller than Patrick Beverley. It's not going to not work. If you just throw him the ball, he's going to score 45. He's just going to score 45. And when you make him mad, then he's going to score 50. And
Lou Williams even said in that, and he shot over us. And you know why? Because I'm as tall as I am.
Exactly.
There's nothing else that I can do.
I think it's hard for the haters to compartmentalize because, like, watching the Celtics game yesterday, Kyrie Irving talked all down the stretch. Wait till the playoff Celtics come around. Wait till we figure this out in the playoffs. Well, then they were the playoff Celtics yesterday, and they just ripped the Bucks. They just ripped them. Like Paul Pierce said, in the NBA, there's certain games in playoff series where you watch that game and you're like, well, this is over. That series is over. Like the Bucks are the number one seed. They won 60 games. They got Giannis. They got all this stuff. They're not going to beat the Celtics. The matchup is clear. They laid it out right there. You can't stop them. And if Kyrie Irving is playing like he played yesterday, I mean, imagine if LeBron James had that turnaround fadeaway 18-footer that Kyrie Irving has when he works out of the high post and he's just old man in you and then he just shoots the turnaround fadeaway. I mean, if you gave that to some of these other superstars, they're averaging 40 a game. Like Kyrie, when he actually gets it honed in, it's so funny how easy it is to forget, right? We're talking here Damian Lillard, we're talking debating Russell Westbrook, Steph Curry, all this stuff. We forgot about Kyrie Irving. Then Kyrie Irving does that, you're like, well, man, maybe – I mean, it's not a debate between Dame and Russ, in my opinion, anymore, but it is maybe still a debate with Dame and Kyrie when Kyrie's got his head on straight. Mm-hmm. It's but I get where you're coming from, no doubt. Multiple things that I think that it's easy to forget. Like on a missed shot, when somebody gets a rebound, and then all of a sudden they're down the court and Kevin Durant catches the ball on the block and he's ISO'd and he just takes it. It seems like that's such a pickup style, but it's not. It's part of the systematic offense. It's part of the extended fast break. Like a team like the Warriors, for example, that have the core guys in place. If Draymond Green gets the rebound on the left side of the court, they have an entrenched set of things that they're going to do where he brings the ball up, and if this happens, this is the action you run. So it's not as like haphazard or improvisational as maybe it looks like it is. That's just how good these guys are. But I get with what you're saying, though, because you can't just go back to the well and just say, hey, we're scrapping it. The Rockets are a great example.
We're going to put Tucker in the corner. We're going to give the ball to James Harden. We're going to put Clint Capella here, and you other two just wait on the defensive end.
The spread is a pretty good analogy. It's actually more like the option. James Harden's running the option.
Yeah,
he can take the dive himself. He can take the pull up. He can take the step back. He can pitch.
I'm only saying the spread.
No, I get what you're saying.
In theory, right? Something will absolutely always be open, and it's just a question of whether you hit it, whether you throw it to the right guy, and whether he makes the catch. That's it. In the NBA, it's the same way. If they're in front of you, I mean, the Utah Jazz are standing behind James Harden. Behind James Harden. The sabermetrics say make him shoot a floater. That's it. Yeah. So they are standing behind him.
It's
30 feet from the hoop.
It's why the 3-point the implementation of the 3-point line is the most impactful rule change in the history of sport. Absolutely.
No argument. The one thing I'll say about this, though, I complain bitterly about the defense. The one ray of light that we have here is Giannis Antetokounmpo, because he is the one guy who actually can defend in such a way as to alter what their ability is even when they have all the things that they want going. He can guard James Harden on the perimeter. He can guard Clint Capella on the block.
Yep.
And he can move from the top to the bottom.
Yep.
And as far as I know, he's the only human on earth that can do it. I don't know of one other person that can do it.
Kawhi Leonard is best.
Okay, Kawhi.
It's easy. Kawhi hasn't drawn the premier matchup since he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But it's easy to forget that Kawhi Leonard shut down LeBron James at LeBron James' absolute peak and was the Finals MVP. At that moment, Kawhi Leonard was in the conversation as the best player in the world
for sure. And he's an elite defender, and so he's got the size to do it, because you have to have this excruciatingly unique physical makeup to be able to do it, of speed and of length. And Giannis and perhaps Kawhi, they're the two guys that have it. Nobody else has it. And you want to know who I think is maybe the most underrated defender in the game? Steph Curry.
Totally.
Steph Curry.
Off the ball.
Steph
No
Curry is as as big a disadvantage as anyone in the league could be physically to stop anyone in the league from doing anything. And his ability to anticipate, to position himself, to have quick hands, and even to body up at times, to draw charges and things of that nature, is absolutely next level. And it's completely miraculous, and nobody even thinks twice about it, because he still gets scored on regularly. And it's still a matchup that guys want to have, because they know that once it's one-on-one, they can pretty much do what they want with him. And that is no indictment on Steph Curry, who is as good as you could imagine him being defensively.
2 points. First of all, we talked about this last week, but I think this is another example of how the NBA is the sport that evolves the most often, the most quickly. Back in 1979, no one could have ever imagined a point guard that was over 6'4", and then all of a sudden, Irvin Magic Johnson gets drafted to the Los Angeles Lakers, and it completely changed the game. What we have now, I mean, Dirk Nowitzki deserves so much credit for being sort of the first. I mean, there was a couple other big guys that could kind of do the pick and pop, step out, hit the 20-footer. Patrick Ewing, among the old school centers, probably had.
I remember Sam Perkins being a complete miracle. What do you mean he's 6'10" and he's shooting a three? He's even attempting a three.
He had to do that. He had to do that to completely rebrand himself, though, and he was like it was a miracle. We're talking about him because he could hit a couple, but he was like a 9-point per game guy. You know, he was good for hitting 1 or 2 or 3. As far as the guy who can catch it up top in the high post on the pick and pop, you can run the trailer where the point guard, he inbounds the ball, the point guard just gives it to him on the handoff, he shoots it. Dirk created that. And Dirk created Kevin Durant. I mean, Kevin Durant is a product of Dirk more than anything else. Don Nelson on down to Donnie Nelson, on down to Mike D'Antoni, the 7 seconds or less offense, those have revolutionized the game too. But I also think that the NBA evolves more rapidly and more often than any other professional sport, and it also gives us reasons to nitpick it. We are like opposite of prisoner of the moment. We just always think that what it is maybe isn't what it used to be, and that's just absolutely not true. If you go watch games from the 90s, they suck compared to what they are now, just in terms of visual appeal. When the hand-checking thing was a rule, like when you were allowed to hand-check and grab guards coming through the lane, just knock guys on the ground, it just wasn't as appealing in terms of basketball. And I think that everything comes full circle, right? Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, these guys are unicorns. They're the way that they're built physically, it's once in a generation, if that. They're going to find guys that are like that. They have that physical makeup. But I do think that we're going to be able to continue to find more guys that can play defense like Kawhi Leonard, because he's not nearly as much of an anomaly. Kawhi Leonard's a phenomenal athlete, but he's 6'7". There's a lot more 6'7" guys running around out there than there are guys that are 7 feet 7'1", like Giannis and KD. So I think that it might come full circle, but also I think that there's a distinct thing happening right now in the divide between college basketball and the NBA, that we've seen the infiltration, and it's sort of coming back around in the NFL. We talked about this last week, but the NFL was running so much different concepts offensively than college football was. And now that there's a little bit more meshing, the quarterbacks have a little bit easier of a transition getting into the NFL, which then makes the learning curve less steep and it makes the quality better. Right now in college, the way the game is played, I mean, now I'm going to go on a complete tangent, but college basketball needs to change their rules. The fact that men's college basketball should go to the women's rules right now. I don't think they necessarily need a 24-second shot clock, but they need to go to a 30-second shot clock for sure. They need to go to quarters for sure, and they need to go to being able to advance the ball with timeouts. The quarters thing, especially with the new prioritization on the rules, in college basketball, they've made all these new rules. If you're banging in the post, everybody's fouling out. If you're doing, I mean, there's so many different things, but we see games now, especially at the mid-major level, where there's 55 or 60 fouls called. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
But also, these guys are not ready to play defense at the NBA level because they're not playing the same game. It's not the same sport. College basketball and the NBA have never been farther apart in terms of what the sport is all about. And I think that's why you see guys like Steve Nash and Steph Curry and Damian Lillard who are good college players, but then they go exceed their production year one. I mean, Damian Lillard averaged more points per game his first year in NBA than he did in the Big Sky Conference, and he was a great player in the Big Sky Conference. But the rules are even more catered to his skill set. And that's the argument I would make to contrast your viewpoint, because I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. But more than anything else, the NBA has more guys with skill than it ever has before, and I think that is the most positive thing that's ever happened in the league, because you used to be able to get by off of brute strength, athleticism, being able to get to the rim, and you still can to a certain extent, but you have to fill a different role. There's more guys that can handle the ball at an absolutely all-time great level right now in the league than there ever has been. I think that's why the offenses are so unstoppable like you're talking about. But I also predict that it's going to come back around. As the college game evolves and more guys are more ready for the NBA-style system, it'll help. But I think there's also going to be a more of a priority. I mean, look at just the way that the power forward and center positions have changed in the league just in the last 3 or 4 years. You can't afford to have that clunky dude anymore. You have to have the guy that can go out and guard on the perimeter, that can handle that high pick and roll. And that's why Draymond Green's a great example of a guy. Like, it used to be you wanted Charles Oakley. Now you want Draymond Green.
Right.
And I think that as teams continue to copy each other and it continues to gravitate and there's more shooters, there'll be more defenders, and it will even out. But right now it's definitely the heyday of all time for offenses because of the prioritization it puts on skill, being on the ball, all that kind of stuff.
Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. As soon as we wrap up here, we will send you out to Canada, Toronto, for Game 2 of the Raptors 76ers series. Went decidedly towards Toronto in Game 1, so we'll get you the Sixers Raptors game when we're all finished up here. But got to do a little bit of high school stuff and perhaps a rant on replaying NBA games, because I got something else to say, not about the NBA now, but about attempting to watch games that have already been finished. So we'll get to all of that. Coulter, you and I had a fun opportunity to head over to Coeur d'Alene, play at the Coeur d'Alene Golf Resort a week ago or so, a couple weeks now, and stay in the hotel, play on a 5-star resort golf course, take a Standcraft boat from the resort over to the golf course where your clubs are waiting for you. You pull into the valet. They take your clubs out of your bag. You think you're being robbed, except for the guys wearing knickerbockers, so you know, well, yeah, he probably works here. And then you go in and you show up, and guess what? There's your clubs right on the back of your cart waiting for you. Obviously, unlimited balls on the driving range, which is the lake. Floating balls into the lake. Don't worry, you're not littering. They collect these things. They're all contained, the whole thing. But an absolute blast and a spectacular course. If you think that if you're any sort of golfer or you know someone who is, if it's Father's Day, if it's birthday, or maybe if it's just an excuse to have a great excursion for the weekend, stay and play. Take the family. You'll love having the family in the hotel and all that as well. They'll enjoy it very much. Coeur d'Alene, a beautiful city to visit. Great location, obviously on the lake and everything like that. CDAResort.com is where you go. CDAResort.com. Spectacular weekend awaits you. Enjoy it. CDAResort.com.
Hey, Tootell and Nuanez is on from 4 to 6 every afternoon on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
We also know that not everybody can listen to all 2 hours every single day.
Well, they should, Coulter. I mean, what else do you have to do? Take off work early, drive home slow, and sit in your driveway for 70 minutes to get the entire show.
Here's the thing. We've made it easy for everybody to listen to the show every single day whenever it's convenient for them by podcasting every show.
Well, that's nice of us.
You can listen to the full Tootell and Nuanez every single day on iTunes, the TuneIn Radio app, Spotify, and Podbean. Tootell and Nuanez, the podcast, available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense, excitement, and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in Montana. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Montana High School Association and the Montana Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Hey folks, Ryan Tootell, and I'm here with Josh of the Advocates. Josh, do most injury accidents end up in court?
Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court through a fair negotiation with an insurance company. However, sometimes it is necessary. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get a fair settlement. Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court with a fair negotiation with the insurance company. However, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get the right settlement for you.
It's Josh at the Advocates, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com.
Some so-called sports bars, you spend so much time fighting to see the TV, you're better off just staying home. Others show the game, but a basket of stale rye chips is not exactly your idea of a good game grub. At the Desperado, you get front row seats to every single spring baseball and NASCAR event, plus all the spring NBA and NHL postseason action. And with juicy burgers, ice-cold brews, and the best wings in town, you'll leave the Desperado satisfied whether your team won or lost. The Desperado Sports Tavern, with the emphasis of sports, food, and good times on South Russell, across from the Y.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news. It took until the end of the final round, but the Big Sky Conference streak of having a player drafted continued on Saturday with the 30th pick in the 7th round of the NFL draft and the 244th selection overall. The New Orleans Saints took Idaho linebacker Caden Ellis. The pick means the Big Sky has had at least one player drafted every year since 2000. Ellis played just one season in the Big Sky after spending the first 3 years of his college career for the Vandals in the FBS in the Sun Belt.
Ellis was one of 18 former Big Sky players to sign with NFL teams after the draft ended, including former University of Montana safety Reed Miller. A graduate transfer from Arkansas, started 8 games last season for the Grizzlies. He will participate in a 3-day minicamp May 10th through the 12th with the New Orleans Saints, hoping to get a free agent contract.
More than 2,000 runners turned out for the 47th annual YMCA Riverbank Run. Jacob Veru won the men's trifecta in a time of 47 minutes and 26 seconds, while Marissa Sowles won the women's side in a time of 1:13:58.
And finally, in the championship game of the Pacific Northwest Collegiate Lacrosse League, the College of Idaho took down the hosts from the University of Montana 17-8, but the Grizz are still heading to the national tournament. Montana received an at-large bid to the MCLA D2 tournament. UM is a number 13 seed and will take on Dayton in Salt Lake City on May 6th at 11 a.m.
Find Tootell and Nuanez on the World Wide Web at 1029ESPN.com. Facebook/ESPN Missoula. And for the best Big Sky coverage in the state of Montana, go to SkylineSportsMT.com. Now from the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tootell and Coulter Nuanez.
Hi. How are you? Good? I hope you're well. I trust that you're well. Coulter, how you doing?
Great.
Glad to hear it. How can you do not well when Gary Clark Jr. is serenading you in the background? Gary Clark, is he coming back to town?
September 8th, I believe, is the date.
Oh. Cancel the show. Set up the tent. Got to get in line right now. Gary Clark Jr. Let's go. All right. Coulter, it is time for a Prep Extra segment. It is brought to us by the Farmer State Bank. Farmer State Bank, all the bank you'll ever need under one roof. Checking, savings, investing, mortgage loans, personal loans, mobile banking options, even internet banking. Farmer State Bank and farmersebank.com. Coulter, talk to me about a little bit of high school stuff going on here.
First and foremost, a little news here. Due to unfavorable weather forecast for tomorrow, the annual Midland Roundtable Top 10 track meet will actually be held Wednesday instead in Laurel. We all know about the Russ Pilcher Top 10 track meet. That's a lot of athletes from around western Montana. Top 10 marks in the region, basically, is in the state region, I guess that is. And then they do a very similar one sponsored by Midland Roundtable over in Billings, or I guess in this case Laurel. Laurel has the beautiful new track right around their turf field. I mean, one of the best high school sports complexes you'll find anywhere, not just in Montana, anywhere. Tremendous there. But it was supposed to be really cold and snowy, of course, as it is in Montana.
I mean, it's April
spring.
29th.
Yeah, I should stop doing this, but regardless, moved it to Wednesday, so there's a little bit of news there. So we'll have some follow-ups there because there'll surely be some good times coming out of that. That's one of the best parts about these top 10s is you're running against kids from all classifications, and the heats are oftentimes really fast, so they push you for great marks. Some other notable track occurrences from the last couple weeks around the state of Montana. Jaden Foster from Missoula Sentinel at the top 10 meet. He went under 11 seconds in the 100 meters. Well, Connor Ryan from Billings West, he joined him as the second young man in Montana to go under 10 seconds. Billings West kid ran 10.96 over the weekend. A bunch of really fast times. There's been about a dozen guys that have gone under 11.3, and 11.3 is the state. So Montana a couple years back, they added qualifying standards. So it used to be that you just had to place at divisionals. But now, if you run a certain mark, which is usually a pretty elite mark in your respective event, say you can't go at divisionals or you have too many events or you're hurt or whatever it might be, it's to help avoid guys that maybe, like say Trey Tittinger from Helena High. He's already jumped 6'11". If he somehow scratched out at the divisional meet, didn't make it to state, that'd be just a shame. It'd be not good for anybody involved. You want the guys that are the best to be there, guys and girls that are the best to be there. So now there's qualifying standards. So the 100-meter qualifying standard is 11.3, and there's already been 12 kids that have done that punched their ticket. So, you have to be an elite. You have to hit an elite mark to get that automatic qualifying standard. But it's a good addition because if you have an elite qualifying standard, you should be able to go.
Be honest now.
Yeah.
Honest.
Yep.
What do you think, best guess, I could do on giving it my all, 100 meters?
Oh, man. Like 15 or 16 seconds. No, you don't think you could?
No.
Yeah. You're saying slower?
Yeah.
Bro.
I might push 20.
Nah. Like a brisk walk would get you there in about 18.
No.
I don't know, man. Let's go do it sometime.
No.
I'd love to see it.
I got no interest in doing it. I just think that, first of all, if I really ran, there's almost a 98+% chance that I go down.
Tear your hamstring.
Injured. Just buckshot right to the backside.
A couple other notable marks. Big Timber's Casey Gunlickson. He was a multiple-time champion last year. I think he won the 100, the 200, and one of the jumping events last year, the Class B.
Okay.
He ran an 11:01 in the 100 meters over the weekend. The reason that's of consequence, the Class B all-time record is 11:02, set by Butte High football coach Ari Gray when he was an athlete at Deer Lodge just before he went on to play football at Montana State. But 11:02 is the Class B record. Gunlickson has run 11:01. As we know, you have to run your state record times at state meets.
Because it's the only one that's got the timer on it.
The timer, the wind-aided stuff,
right.
Quality control, all that kind of stuff. So, but Gunlickson's definitely in the mix for that. A couple other notable marks. Dylan's Talia DeJean, she ran a 12:49, which is blazing fast for a high school girl over the weekend, and that will be in the mix for the Class A all-class record as well, if she's able to replicate that at the state meet. And another mark that just completely jumped off the page. We've talked about Delaney Bond on this show extensively over the last 2 years. She's the champion long jumper from Bozeman High. She flirted with 20 feet at the Optimist meet up in Great Falls a couple weeks ago. Set the stadium record. That 19:11 1/4 inch, the farthest jump in the history of the state of Montana, period, any class, anything. But the surprising mark is she ran the 100 meters for the first time last week. She ran the fastest time in the state. She ran 11:47 or 12:47, excuse me. So we talk a lot about if you can run fast, you can probably long jump, and if you can long jump, it's probably because you can run. A lot of it is probably because you can run fast. It's just interesting because Bozeman High is going to be the number one challenger to the Missoula Sentinel girls at the Class AA meet. Sentinel's the 2-time defending state champions. Bozeman High, though, they have the distance core, and then they have Delaney Bond. And if she can score them points in the 100 to go along with her long jump and triple jump, that could really impact Missoula Sentinel because, as we know, Missoula Sentinel scores a ton of points in the sprints, a ton of points in the hurdles led by Ashley McElmurray, and a ton of points in the horizontal jumps because they have McElmurray and Lauren Hagen, the two best horizontal jumpers besides Bond. But if Bond can somehow pick up a point or two in the 100 meters, that's going to be of big-time consequence as well. So this is the time now. Here we are, April 29th. State meets are the weekend of May 24th. So this is about the time when coaches start pulling the reins off as the weather's getting a little bit warmer, and now all of a sudden you get a little bit higher competition. You're trying to push your kids towards peaking. And so I imagine we're going to get a bunch of really good marks here coming out the next couple weeks. So that's something we'll definitely keep you up to date on, but just a little look at track and field around the state of Montana.
Thank you, Coulter. It's our Prep Extra segment brought to us by the Farmers State Bank. To finish off today, everybody's watching Game of Thrones except for me, but I would like to use the Game of Thrones as a filed complaint about NBA television.
It's time for the spring tire sale at Les Schwab. Save up to $200 depending on tire size and type on a set of 4 tires, including the Open Country AT2 and MT, some of our previous best sellers. Of course, you'll get the warranty we've stood behind for 65 years at no extra charge. And now you can book an appointment online at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Limited warranty conditions apply. For details, visit leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
Hey folks, Ryan Tootell here, and I'm with Josh from the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, if our listeners have been injured in an accident, how can you help?
We're here to help you after a car accident by negotiating with insurance companies, recovering lost wages if you have any, and even getting you into a rental car if you need one. Call us today for a free consultation, and we'll get started helping you right away.
If you need help, get a hold of the Advocates. Call Josh at 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate. Hey folks, the best season of the year is upon us. That's right, it's tax return season, and there's one place to have the most fun and make that refund check stretch further than anywhere else: Selway Armory. Selway Armory has the largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories of anywhere around, and they have the expertise to go with it. It's not everywhere that you can shop local and save money, but Selway Armory will meet or beat any box store price, and your money stays in Montana. It's tax return time, so get more bang for your buck at Selway Armory. Visit online at selwayarmory.com. Springtime is the time to buy a new Polaris off-road vehicle. During the spring sales event, rebates go as high as $1,500 and financing is as low as 3.99%. Live your life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes in a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger, or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. Whatever you're looking for, now is the time to take your pick from the off-road's best-selling lineup. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $1,500 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Spring Sales Event at Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and on Highway 80 83 in Sealy. The best deals on the coolest machines and all the accessories are at Kurtz Polaris and KurtzPolaris.com. Recreate the right way with Kurtz Polaris. Offer valid in U.S. through 4/30/19 on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and ride. Hey, Tootell and Nuanez is on from 4 to 6 every afternoon on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
We also know that not everybody can listen to all 2 hours every single day.
Well, they should, Coulter. I mean, what else do you have to do? Take off work early, drive home slow, and sit in your driveway for 70 minutes to get the entire show.
Here's the thing. We've made it easy for everybody to listen to the show every single day whenever it's convenient for them by podcasting every show.
Well, that's nice of us.
You can listen to the full Tootell and Nuanez every single day on iTunes, the TuneIn Radio app, Spotify, and Podbean. Tootell and Nuanez, the podcast, available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Welcome back. Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. If you missed anything in the show, you can listen on the Tootell and Nuanez podcast. Hey, what a deal that is. Podcast, don't let all our hard work go to waste, people. Check it out. TuneIn Radio app, iTunes, Spotify. It is there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. About 3 minutes left here, which is an extraordinarily long final segment by our standards. And we are going to send you listening on the radio, ESPN Radio, out to Toronto for Game 2 of the Eastern Conference semis between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Toronto Raptors. We'll get you set for that thing.
Have you by chance seen the way Steve Kerr entered his press conference today?
I have not.
He entered the circle of reporters and pretended to slip on the floor and then flopped all around, waving his arms frantically and acting disgruntled, and then got up and said, "Oh, well, if I played for the Rockets, they would think that was a foul."
It's everybody trying to position for themselves.
The greatest thing ever is that Steve Kerr looks like such a little choir boy that everybody thinks he is, and in fact, he might be like the antagonist of all the NBA. Like,
he was able to continue being Michael Jordan's teammate.
There's only a few words you could use to describe Steve Kerr, and I can't use any of them on the radio.
Yeah. Okay, I need to file a complaint, dude, so that this is logged, so that this is public. Everybody's watching Game of Thrones. LaShawn McCoy got in trouble for saying some stuff about Game of Thrones on his Twitter feed. We all know, what do you lead with if you're going to talk about a thing? Spoiler alert, right? Spoiler alert. People haven't seen the thing, and so you don't want to give it away. I worked all weekend long. I didn't get to watch any games in real time. And then, sadly enough, I had a glitch out on my DVR for the Rockets-Warriors game, which was the game I wanted the most to see. And so I did not have it recorded, and I was very disappointed. And I kind of searched around, and I found on NBA TV, they do this thing where they edit the game down. You can watch it in an hour. Okay?
Yep.
Great. And I love it, and I appreciate it, and it helped me out. Until, as I'm watching it, embedded in the broadcast itself, showed up every 5 minutes, so it is unmissable. You are watching Golden State versus Houston from such and such day, April the 28th, 2019. Golden State held serve against the Houston Rockets and is up 1-0 in the series. What are you doing? The reason anyone is watching the game with you now is because they don't know what happened, and they're watching it because they want to find out in an organic way that is as impactful as it would have been had they been there to start. And you don't, it's not even the ticker, which is egregious as it is. They bring up a graphic to show you how this thing ends while you're watching it. I almost broke my TV. Police cars everywhere as I'm screaming at 11:30 last night at my television alone in my living room.
You're the only one that doesn't know the result.
I'm not the only one. That's why it's on. And if I wanted to look it up, the internet is there for all of us. Ubiquitous information on the entire existence of mankind there in your pocket. Okay? Leave me alone with your graphics. See you tomorrow.
Alpine Touch is legendary around the state of Montana for providing delicious seasonings for every grilling occasion. Now, Alpine Touch offers so much more, from a savory new barbecue sauce to spicy pepper blends to tasty barbecue rubs. In addition to the classic, Alpine Touch has a variety of seasoning salts for whatever you need to spice up. Now that the holidays are over, Alpine Touch makes a perfect thank you gift to show your friends and relatives you love them. Alpine Touch, available at retail locations around Montana or online at alpinetouch.com. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up, pump it up.
Town Pump knows you need your energy, and that's why if you stop in today, you can get 2 16-ounce Red Bulls for only $6. And if you need something a little stronger, try a Blue Moon 15-pack on sale for $14.99. Stock up today. Town Pump Food Stores, proud to be part of our community.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it up. Oh yeah.
Hey folks, Ryan Tootell here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain, they still need to get to work, they need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance companies so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana. KKVU HD3 Stevensville and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula.